You're being way too sensitive. That's what she said. Right there, at the table, in front of her best friend's new fiancé, and the waiter who awkwardly caught the moment mid-wine pour. I hadn't even raised my voice. All I did was ask her not to make fun of me, not to share that story, the one from last fall. Cabo. And she laughed. Oh my God, babe. It's not that deep. Then she turned to the others and added with a smirk. He does this all the time. Gets so delicate. Must be a childhood thing. Her friend, Lauren, laughed. The kind of polite laugh you give when you're not sure if you're in on the joke or just witnessing something uncomfortable. I felt something shift in me, like a thread inside my chest pulled taut. Here's the thing about public humiliation. It doesn't arrive as a thunderclap. It lands soft, subtle, a chill that settles behind your ears before it sinks into your gut. I wiped my hands on the napkin, folded it twice, said nothing. For a second, I even forced a smile, tried to play along. But her eyes met mine, and there was something in them, a challenge, or maybe worse, indifference. They went back to talking about the new resort Lauren's fiancé had booked for their honeymoon. My wife slipped effortlessly into the conversation, passing over what just happened like it was a leaf on a stream. But me? I was still back there, stuck on that one word. Sensitive. It wasn't just that she said it. It was how. With this dismissive tilt of the head. With this edge of performative tolerance. Like she was babysitting a petulant child and not talking to the man who helped her mother through chemo. The man who covered her law school loans. The man who, 3 months ago, held her sobbing on the hotel floor in Cabo when she thought she'd ruined everything. Yeah, that story. She told that one. At the table. With wine glasses clinking and candles flickering. She told our most vulnerable, private moment like it was a bit. A punchline. And then when I asked her, quietly, to maybe not make me the joke in front of strangers, she served me that word. Too sensitive. She'd used it before, but never in front of others. Never with that particular flavor of cruelty. And never with witnesses who didn't even know the full story. But Lauren did. Lauren knew. She was the one who picked up my wife from the airport the morning after the Cabo trip. She was the one who helped hide the truth. And now here she was, playing both sides of the table, laughing at me, nodding with her, acting like this was all just harmless fun. So I sat back, smiled, took a sip of my drink, and I waited. I let the conversation breathe. Let the night roll on for another 20 minutes while they shared stories and selfies, flipping their phones around to show vacation reels, brunch snapshots, captions about love and laughter. Then Lauren excused herself to the restroom. I turned to her fiancé, Dan, a nice enough guy, ex-military, now in real estate. Quiet. The kind who still says, yes ma'am, to waitresses. The kind who hadn't yet figured out Lauren wasn't quite who she pretended to be. Hey, I said, leaning in. Can I ask you something? He nodded. Sure. Does Lauren know about the guy in Cabo? Across the table, I felt my wife freeze. I didn't look at her. I just kept my eyes on Dan, who blinked, confused. The guy, he asked. Yeah, I said, calm even. The one my wife hooked up with. While we were supposed to be fixing our marriage. There was a sound then. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a fork. It slipped from my wife's hand and clattered against the plate. Dan looked at me. Then at her. Then back at me. You're joking, he said. Half laughing. I didn't laugh. I didn't blink. I just held the silence. When Lauren came back to the table, she saw all three of us staring at her. And I swear to God, she knew. She knew before anyone said a word. Her smile didn't just fade. It dropped, like something physical fell out of her. My wife whispered, "What the hell are you doing?" I looked at her, finally. Being sensitive, I said. And that was the moment it all turned. Lauren didn't sit down. She stood there, blinking, hands still on the back of her chair like she was trying to remember which world she was in. The one where she played the smug confidant, or the one where everything had just unraveled with a single sentence. Dan looked up at her. You knew? She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned to my wife. You said it was over. You said it was a mistake. My wife, Julia, reached for her wine glass, but missed it by an inch. Her hand was shaking. Can we please not do this here? Lauren sat down slowly. Dan didn't. He stood, napkin falling off his lap, and placed both hands on the table like he needed to steady himself. So it's true. Julia didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me. Not with anger. Not even fear. Just disbelief. Like I had betrayed her by telling the truth she buried. Do you feel better now? She asked, voice low. No, I said. Not yet. Dan stepped back from the table. He looked like someone had just handed him a puzzle with pieces missing. Wait, when was this? January, I said. Cabo. Supposed to be a fresh start. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Lauren turned to me, her voice sharp. You said you forgave her. You said you wanted to move on. I shook my head. I said I was trying. Big difference. My wife, still silent, took a long, deliberate sip of her wine like it might drown the taste of what was unfolding. She stared straight ahead. Not at me. Not at them. Just forward, like if she focused hard enough the room might reset. But it didn't. The waiter appeared, oblivious. Can I interest you all in dessert? No, Dan snapped. Just the check. The waiter, startled, nodded and scurried off. Lauren finally spoke. This is low. Even for you. I looked at her. Funny. That's what Julia said to me in Cabo, right before she left our hotel bed to go meet him. Dan's eyes widened. You were there? Yeah, I said, voice flat. I was in the room when she snuck out. Pretended she was going for a walk. I followed her. Watched her kiss him outside a beach bar. I didn't say anything. I just walked back. Packed my bag. Slept on the lobby couch until morning. My wife set her glass down, her voice barely above a whisper. We agreed not to bring it up again. No, I corrected. You asked me not to. I never agreed. The air was so thick it hurt to breathe. Lauren folded her arms. Dan sat back down, staring at nothing. And me? I watched them all sit in the ruins of the narrative they'd helped spin. I wasn't the overly sensitive husband anymore. I was just a man who'd finally spoken. The check came. Dan grabbed it before anyone else could move. He looked at me with something that wasn't quite anger, but wasn't forgiveness either. I need some air, he said to Lauren. And then he walked out without looking back. Lauren followed, tossing a final glance at my wife. One filled with accusation. With betrayal. Because even though she'd kept the secret, she hadn't realized it was going to turn into a landmine. And now it had exploded in her lap too. That left just Julia and me. She didn't speak. Just sat there with her hands in her lap and her face locked in that expressionless mask she wore when she didn't want to cry in public. I stirred the melting ice in my drink. You embarrassed me, she said finally. I laughed, not cruelly, just bitterly. No, you embarrassed me. I just stopped covering for it. I thought you loved me. I did. Enough to forgive you. Enough to try. She looked down at her lap. Then why do this? Because you mocked me for trying, I said. You didn't just make a mistake. You made me the punchline. She nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. I stood, grabbed my coat. You want to talk? Really talk? I'll be at home. You can come by. Without the performance. Without the audience. She didn't move. Just sat there in silence. As I walked past her, I said one last thing. You called me sensitive. And you were right. I just stopped being sensitive to you. I didn't look back. I half expected her not to come home that night. Maybe she'd crash at Lauren's. Maybe she'd disappear into some hotel bar and drink herself into forgetfulness. That was her pattern. Bury the fire. Pretend the smoke's just someone else's candle. But by 11:42 p.m., I heard her key in the lock. She didn't slam the door. She didn't call my name. She just walked in, heels in her hand, hair pinned back like she'd had to compose herself in someone else's mirror before facing this house again. I stayed on the couch. Lights low. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, the kind that breathes beside you like something alive. She stood in the doorway for a long time, like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. Then, you humiliated me. I looked at her. No, I stopped protecting you. She crossed the room, sat in the armchair across from me, careful not to sink too deep. Always poised. Even now. Even after everything. He doesn't know the whole story, she said. Neither does Lauren. Neither did I replied. That didn't stop you from using my pain as dinner party entertainment. Her mouth opened, then closed. No defense came. Just a sigh. Tired. Worn. I didn't think you'd ever tell, she said. Quiet. That hurt more than anything else. I know, I said. That was the whole problem. We sat there, two people who'd built a marriage on shared dreams and silent concessions, now staring across a battlefield of half-truths and quiet betrayals. I was scared, she whispered. In Cabo. Of how far we drifted. Of how numb I'd gotten. That night, it wasn't about him. It was about not feeling invisible. I nodded. And I was invisible. I stayed. I forgave. I buried it. And you called me sensitive like it was a weakness. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in months, maybe longer, I saw the person I used to wake up beside. The one who once knew how to reach me. I'm sorry, she said. And she meant it. But it didn't feel like a fix. It felt like a funeral. I leaned forward. I don't want revenge. I never did. I just wanted you to see me. Not the man who buys flowers after an argument or foots the therapy bills. Me. The man you promised to protect too. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Pride still holding the door shut, even as guilt pounded on the frame. Is this the end? She asked. I thought about that for a long moment. No, I said, but it's the end of pretending. She nodded, and I could see her understanding it wasn't a threat. It was a boundary, a truth spoken too late, but still spoken. She slept in the guest room that night, not out of punishment, but because healing, real healing, requires space, requires silence. Not the kind that hides things, the kind that makes room for them to be seen. We started therapy a week later. Together, then separately. It wasn't easy. It wasn't cinematic. Some days we talked. Some days we sat in opposite corners of the same house like strangers waiting on a bus that might never come. But we didn't lie anymore. She told Lauren the truth. Dan called to thank me. Not angrily, not dramatically, just as a man who'd been spared a future he didn't see coming. And me? I learned that sensitivity wasn't my flaw. It was my compass, my gift. I had felt the cracks before they showed. I had carried the weight before anyone else noticed it existed. Months passed. Some days, I still flinch when someone uses that word, sensitive, like it's a punchline. But now I wear it differently. Not like armor. Not like shame. Just truth. Because when someone finally sees you, really sees you, there's no need to shout. No need to retaliate. Just a quiet knowing that some things, once spoken, cannot be unheard. And sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is simply stop whispering.